to the Wall Street Journal's Jillian Melcher, a Trump for President advisor Gina Loudon, the Tax Foundation's Scott Hodge. Scott, let's say beyond the subterfuge, Ryan's days are numbered. He's had it with this. It's a high-pressure job. Doesn't want to do it. Then what? Who does that?
Well, that's a good question. You know, since the day that Paul Ryan walked into Congress, he has been the idea man in the Republican Party. He's a policy wonk, and he's been pushing the envelope on policy ideas, in some cases in the face of a very timid Republican caucus. And so he will be missed, and I don't see anybody who's there ready to take that mantle. And so I think he will leave a huge void in the policy arena for Republicans. All right.
Now, in the meantime, we should stress here this story that's coming from Politico. You know, not everyone is buying, including Ryan's staff. And Gina, they're saying it's just not happening. So what are we to make of all this?
I don't know. I certainly think if Paul Ryan were to decide to go, that it would present a great opportunity for maybe members of the Freedom Caucus who are more thoroughly aligned and committed, perhaps, to the president's agenda that the American people voted for. So I could see some really good things happening if that were the case. If it's not the case, I hope that Paul Ryan will continue to stay the course and really, really fight hard to push through the president's agenda and get his members to do the same.
It is a tough job. They age in that job, all those guys. I don't know what it is. Anyway, Jillian, this shutdown talk that seems to be roiling some in the markets here, that it could take away the good news on tax cuts. What do you make of that?
Well, I think this is a problem that could have been prevented in September. We knew that when Trump cut a deal with Pelosi and Schumer, that this was going to be putting it in the middle of tax reform right before Christmas, putting it on a rush. I would have much rather seen this happen after the 2018 elections. But I guess you don't always get what you want.
You would have wished to see what after the 2018?
It bumped back a little bit longer, the spending. But, you know, I think the tax reform it's been the priority. It's been what's sucking the air away from other projects. And that's rightly so, because it is focused on growth. I think it was a tactical error that's prompting the shutdown. But, you know, getting that tax bill passed is going to give the GOP some real momentum.
You know, it's interesting on government shutdowns and who you blame. I know the Republicans are in the majority and yada, yada. But, you know, they're faulted for wanting a shutdown because they're insistent on reining in spending. The other side is not, because they're just as insistent on not doing that. So I always find that curious, but I digress. But, Scott, is it your sense now that Republicans will avoid that, but part of that concession will be a little bit more spending, more certainly on defense, and to keep Democrats happy, more spending on non-defense? So anyone concerned about, you know, deficits or debt, good luck.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, Neil. In fact, you know, if we look at the history of government shutdowns, Republicans always lose. It was Newt Gingrich who shut down the government during that administration and really revived a lot of Bill Clinton's career from there on. And so I don't think they want to repeat that. I think they're willing to make those kind of concessions. They're kind of small and around the edges if it gets them past this sort of fiscal cliff.
You know, Gina Loudon, one of the things that Paul Ryan is saying, I don't have to play the bite, but the gist of it is this, that he thinks that, yeah, polls are showing that this tax bill might be unpopular, but similar polls had shown that Ronald Reagan's tax cut was unpopular, and it takes people a while to sort of rally around it. But that can take some time. Are you worried about that?
No, I'm not worried about that, because, Neil, lots of people who work don't ever take these polls. So they're going to catch people at home that aren't working, aren't producing. And so I think that they're automatically skewed by that. But at the same time, you know, you just give the people, the American people, this great big Christmas present of more than $1,000 for middle class families. They're going to catch on really fast. You combine that with the growth that is to be expected, maybe as high as 4%. You know, our economy is going to be thriving better than it has in decades. And I think people are going to like these tax cuts, and they might even want more.
All right, well, we'll see about that. But, Jillian, this would be a hard act to top, right? I mean, given the improvement we've seen in the economy and the markets thus far, it almost defies, you know, forget about just basic gravity here, but the fact that the tax cuts themselves, once implemented, are going to add considerable momentum to that. I mean, I know there are a number of firms that have put out numbers that say another 7 to 10% run up in stocks. My gosh, we can get that in an average week these days. Do you think expectations are too high? In other words, would you tamp them down?
No, I wouldn't. And here's why. I think it's really good to have that lower corporate rate take effect immediately rather than bump it back a year. But we've been at a sluggish 1.9% roughly economic growth, stuck in that cycle for years. And I think if we can push this beyond 3%, we're going to see a really competitive economy. And that's going to have an effect on even some of the people who are skeptical of this tax bill. Larry Lindsay, writing for our pages, estimating that if you can attain growth at that level, you're going to see 4, 5, 6% wage growth. The labor sector is really going to benefit. So I actually think expectations of this are a little bit low, and that's what we're seeing reflected in the polls.
All right, we'll watch it closely because it's anyone's guess. No one can be wrong making a guess until we see what happens in real time. Guys, thank you all very, very much. In the meantime, we are.